Orson Welles?
Of course it is.
I think it's time we talked.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Film Seizure Streams the Movies. I think that's what we can go with for 2020. You know,
yeah, pretty much.
Although we could have gone to a movie theater for this, but I don't know if I like doing that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So this week, or this time around, I should say, got a pretty high class affair here.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
This
Definitely.
is David Fincher's Mank about Herman Mankiewicz. And as you've already heard, Jason Oliver is with me on this because this is what we do. We talk about the highbrow shit. Chuck doesn't talk about, Chuck talks about Bill and Ted. We talk about the highbrow stuff.
Yeah, last time we did this was what, Sister Tempest, I think?
I think so, yeah. Another artsy
very,
affair.
very, a little bit artsy, a little bit fartsy.
Yeah, a little bit fartsy. I'm always fartsy, but
That's actually a good description for Sister Tempest. It's artsy and fartsy.
Yeah. And
it's a little bit of the highbrow, a little bit of the lowbrow,
Yeah, and I would say that Mank has a little bit of that too.
I would agree. Yeah.
Because you've got a fall down drunk guy, and that's going to always lead to some good comedy effect.
Indeed.
I don't think Gary Oldman is opposed to being a little fall down, little pratfall guy.
He plays a good drunk, and he plays a really good drunk in this.
Yeah. So why don't you start about how you want to talk about Mank?
Okay. So what is Mank? Mank is about Herman J. Mankiewicz, who was a Hollywood screenwriter back in the 30s, primarily. I guess into the early 40s somewhat, but
I think he wrote some in the 20s even, because they referenced that he wrote a Lon Chaney movie.
Yeah. And his brother Joseph Mankiewicz.
He's a big time director.
And screenwriter.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest ever.
Philadelphia Story, I believe, is one of his, and just really, really good stuff. But Herman, his older brother, is famous for co-writing the screenplay for Citizen Kane, arguably the greatest movie ever made. Now, that's obviously debatable, but it's going to always be in those lists of movies, of the best movies ever made. And it was definitely groundbreaking for its time. And
movies weren't made the same after it.
No. And of course, Citizen Kane was directed and co-written by Orson Welles. It was Orson Welles' debut feature. He was kind of given carte blanche to make whatever he wanted by RKO Studios, which was kind of the smallest of the big Hollywood studios at the time.
They hit it big with King Kong in 33 and basically squandered all of that success.
Yeah, and he was given kind of the keys to make this movie, any movie he wanted, on the strength of the War of the Worlds radio broadcast.
Yep.
So it's kind of unprecedented. And they gave this radio guy complete artistic freedom to make a movie, which that would fucking never happen again.
Well, it wouldn't happen today, let's put it that way, because where's the radio guys, right?
Right.
I mean, it would be like I would say
it'd be like giving a YouTuber
it would be like giving us carte blanche from Sony or something, because Sony would fucking do it too.
It would be like giving that guy who made the TikTok, riding his bike and singing the Fleetwood Mac song. It'd be like saying, "Oh, this guy's got what it takes to make a huge movie. Let's give him complete artistic freedom."
He'll probably make a movie about tattoos, but I bet it'll be great.
And honestly, I'd probably watch that movie.
I probably would too.
I bet give that guy like however many $1 million in inflated cash, because I don't know what was Orson Welles' budget for Citizen Kane. I think it was about $1 million.
Probably, which would be considerable money in 1941.
Yep.
Right. I mean, we could at least say the guy on the skateboard doing the Fleetwood Mac, he would have a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
Actually, all of the budget would go to the soundtrack.
But anyway, what the movie Mank is about the writing of Citizen Kane, but not just about the writing of the movie, but about the life and career of Herman J. Mankiewicz.
And specifically his intertwining story with Louis B. Mayer and William Randolph Hearst, because obviously Citizen Kane is a little bit of a stab at Hearst.
Oh, it's a lot of a stab.
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
I was understating that, but which is in and of itself, that's kind of a fascinating topic, right? Because like, what the fuck does RKO have to lose? And if Orson Welles is going to make a splash, you punch up as hard as you can, you know. And
there's I mean there was the documentary, The Battle Over Citizen Kane, which was, I believe, like a PBS documentary about just the monumental task it was to get the movie released after it was made, when Hearst kind of got wind of what was happening. And then that documentary was made into a movie called RKO 281.
That was at the end of the 90s, right?
Which is a dramatic interpretation of that whole story with Liev Schreiber as Wells.
Yeah.
But then this movie is kind of going backward a little bit. It's kind of digging into the inspiration. Like, why would Herman Mankiewicz be the perfect person to write this story? And you really kind of, it takes you deep into his political beliefs, his personal beliefs, he's sort of an outsider in a lot of ways in the studio system, but he's tolerated because he's kind of an amicable guy. He's the court jester. He's jovial.
Well, and he can crank out a script. I mean, he's a bullpen guy. And, also by the mid-30s or so, he was a little bit of a problem for some studios because you couldn't export his movies to Germany. So, it's like you can kind of see also, I mean, because also, let's face it, this country wasn't particularly great towards Jews either.
And it even, and we were one of the last to join the World War II, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were one of the last countries to recognize the horrors that was happening over there. And there was a lot of hand wringing over, the involvement that we should be in as a country, as a government, and a lot of that was perpetuated by the GOP, right? The Republican Party, and that is played up quite a bit in this movie. The differing viewpoints on that.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things I found kind of interesting about the movie is that they're basically telling a political 2020 story in the framework of a political 1930s story. Yeah,
because not only do you have the politics of the war, the impending war, but you also have the politics of the gubernatorial race of 1936, I believe.
I thought it was 34.
34 could be, yeah. Where Upton Sinclair loses his bid for governor against the Republican. I can't remember his name, but the Republican is backed by the studio system, very heavily backed by MGM and most specifically Mayer.
So much Mayer, so that if you worked for MGM, you had to give money to the race.
He expected 100% participation. It reminded me of like the United Way campaigns you see today.
Yeah, right. And it's one of those things that it becomes like a union, which is kind of funny because I would assume that they would have been against a union too. But
so there's a lot going on. There's a lot of these political threads. There's all of these. There's this contention with Mankiewicz and Wells about like the speed at which he needs to make this movie or write this movie. There's a lot of battle with addiction and alcoholism that is explored. There's a lot of there's an exploration of sort of Mankiewicz's infidelity in his marriage, and
which is kind of interesting because It's described as a platonic affair,
Mm-hmm.
which is what Mankiewicz has with the Amanda Seyfried character, and it's very innocent, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, we should mention Seyfried plays Marion Davies, who was the notoriously and famously the mistress of William Randolph Hearst.
Right. And he almost sees her as kind of like, I think, an innocent in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, he's in the trenches with these kind of unsavory film, the power structure of Hollywood, which is not great. I think they do a pretty good job of showing that people are afraid of Hearst, but they're also cutthroat. They're also very, very quick to remind you how you got to where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And if you defy that, then you're nothing to them.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just kind of this, just kind of this shimmering kind of person who's been unsullied by it almost, even though she takes advantage of it. It seems as though they really do try to play her. What's the word I'm looking for? Complimentary.
Yeah, and not totally innocent, but innocent enough, right?
Willing to try to just make her own way, and just I don't really want to get involved with,
right?
Because there's kind of a central point in this movie in which Mayer hires people to make a short film going out against Upton St. Clair. And it is extremely obvious that it is a fear tactic. Who would benefit from Sinclair? Black folks, landowners, or not? I'm sorry, people who don't own land, homeless people, unions. All of these things seem to be kind of pieced together in a way that when Mank sees it, he's kind of disgusted by it. And I think at that point in this story, now I don't know exactly how much of this is all that true, but at least in this story, it seems as though that's his turning point, that he's kind of done playing, kind of dancing to MGM and Hearst's tune a little bit.
Yeah, from my understanding, the smear campaign, the propaganda, fake people on the street, man on the street interviews and things were all did happen. The character who did them in the movie, that didn't really go down that way. He didn't commit suicide. Sorry if that's a spoiler. And all of that. That's kind of, that was all played up for dramatic effect. But yes, you're right. I mean, Mankiewicz was certainly disillusioned by the political connections of these people that he rubbed elbows with. And part of I think the reason why he wanted to write this movie was to kind of take William Randolph Hearst to task for abandoning the more Marxist progressive beliefs of his youth, right? Because Randolph Hearst had changed, and Mankiewicz hadn't. And there was a line where Mankiewicz, he really lays into Hearst, and in one of the best scenes in the movie where Oldman is just almost fall down drunk.
Yeah, this is when he's pitching his movie.
Yeah, and he basically says, "I said it more with sorrow than angrily," right? And it's fascinating because Hearst, at almost every turn, treats Mankiewicz with an element of respect, but also at a bit of an arm's length, right?
Yeah.
He likes having him around.
He likes the way he talks.
He likes the way he talks, right? But there was definitely a line that was crossed, and that was sort of that was it for them, and that's what essentially created the break in, I guess, their relationship or their friendship that allowed Mankiewicz to do what he had to do to write Citizen Kane. Anyway, I think we're getting probably a little bit too much in the weeds on the plot points. This is
Right.
supposed to be, I guess, like a review, but
Right. I mean, yeah. So, allow me to say that I might have liked watching the movie a little bit more than I actually liked the movie itself. I know it's gonna that doesn't sound great, right? But at the same time, it's a good movie. In a year like 2020, it's hard to think that this movie is about as good as we're going to get this year, maybe, or it's up there, obviously. But what I was more kind of falling in love with this movie was the painstaking and very, very obvious way that this movie was made and engineered to feel like it came straight from the 40s. It's like they borrow a lot of shots from Citizen Kane. It is lit and it is framed very similarly to how movies would have been made up to and during the writing of Citizen Kane. And there's an echo that's used in this movie that makes it seem like, first of all, you think, oh, damn it, do I have my TV sound on with my sound system?
It took me a minute to settle in on an audio setting.
Right. But then I realized, oh no, this is purposeful. This is meant to make you feel like you're in a giant movie house in 1940 and you're watching this movie. And of course the giant movie, I mean, hell, just 20 years ago, movie theaters had that echo. Yeah. Because like the theater you worked at had metal walls. And they were much larger than the auditoriums that are out there today. And so, it kind of transported me to that old style, like, and, not to sound kind of, I don't know, silly about it, but it's the magic of movies, right?
I mean, right down to the fact that there are artificial cigarette burns from reel to reel, right? They didn't have to be in there. The cigarette burns are a thing of the past in a digital presentation, but he put them in.
And you certainly wouldn't see them on Netflix.
No. There's a way the story is told because we should mention that the script was written by Fincher's father,
who passed away like 15 years ago or something. Yeah,
and it was supposed to be made in the late 90s, but it didn't happen. But he writes. Or the movie is sort of framed in the setting of the screenplay, right? So you have the locations, and it all kind of types out across the screen. Like the screenplay is, you're following the screenplay in the movie because it's a writer's movie, right? And then there's of course that old Hollywood feel anyway. I love movies about old Hollywood. Yeah. And it very, very realistically, I think, portrays the studio system of the time across multiple studios, which is always interesting. And then,
because I think at one point he's on the lot of Paramount, I think.
And like you said, he is, absolutely is. And then like you said, oh shoot, what did you say? I lost my thread, but sorry, I lost my thread. But it'll come back to me. It's on like the tip of my tongue of where I was going with this. But the movie is, like you said about it being Citizen Kane and taking shots from Citizen Kane. It's structured like Citizen Kane. It's structured with flashbacks. In fact, not only is it mentioned, not only is it shot that way and conceived that way with the flashbacks and moving forward and backward in time, but it's even mentioned that the script that he's writing is hard to follow.
Yeah, John Houseman says that.
Yes. It's hard
Yeah.
to follow because of the flashbacks and the jumps in time, and that it's a bit of confusing. And that was honestly sort of my experience with the first couple reels of this movie. I was like, wait a minute, okay, because it's all black and white, so you're already kind of settling into the aesthetic, right?
Mhm.
You're trying to figure out who these characters are.
You're trying to figure out the goddamn sound.
You're trying to figure out the sound, right? So it does take about 30 minutes or so to kind of get what's happening here. And
Yep.
once you are able to allow yourself to settle in, you can then your attention has been, I think, earned, and it really tells a compelling story.
Yeah, and yeah, because when Houseman says something about it's hard to follow or whatever, and Mank is like, well, welcome to my mind. It's like
Yeah.
it's which is kind of interesting because it's like that is kind of how people think, right? Like people don't think linearly. Which I think makes that very interesting whenever you're talking about a retrospective point of view, whether it's in a story or you're just sitting around and you're thinking about something, right? I'll tell you.
There's another point to that too. Is when Mankiewicz says you cannot tell a man's entire life in 2 hours. You can only leave an impression, right?
Yep.
That's exactly what Fincher is doing here as well, right? The way he's tying the two processes together of making both films is fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that this movie immediately made me think about, and I hadn't thought about this too much, although I think I've mentioned it before when we've done Film Seizure and the whatnots. But it makes me think of the film class I took in my brief stint at college at university. And what I love that class dearly. And if I had a time machine, that would be one place I would go. I would go back to that semester just to go to that class.
Were you at IUPUI?
Yeah. And
did you have Bingham? Did you have Dr. Bingham?
Was
he there then?
I don't remember. This was 23 years ago.
Was he like a Mr. Magoo looking dude?
I don't remember. I remember more about what I watched, and what I learned than I actually did. Now, I do remember that I took 2 classes, and my impression of the 2 classes are exactly flipped from what I expected. I took a film class at one point in time, and I took a creative writing class. And I always thought the creative writing class would be the one that would open my brain, and I would come out of it with a lot more freedom from it, right? And I thought that the film class was going to be stuffy and the teacher was going to be a jerk or whatever. And that whatever the teacher selected for us to watch or to do or whatever, it was going to be expected in his framework, not like what his opinion was of that thing. Turns out it was the other way around. The creative writing class, the guy says, you're going to write what I tell you to write. And when I read you a story or a poem, you're going to believe what I believe. And if you disagree, you're not going to pass this class. It's like, well, I'm out of this class. I'm like 2 weeks in, I was out. And with the film class, it was like, I'm going to set the stage and I'm going to tell you why things are important, but you're going to end up drawing your own conclusion to all of this. And the only movie that I know that I can remember that we watched that I didn't care much for was Meet Me in St. Louis. I just didn't like. I like the whole point and the reason why we watched that movie was like this was the entertainment that people were looking for in the Depression. Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough, but I didn't care much for it. But we did watch Citizen Kane. We watched The Big Sleep.
Yeah.
We watched A Man Apart. No, wait. We watched Breathless. We watched Rumblefish. We watched The Graduate. It's like we didn't watch these movies to be told why they were good or why they were great. We watched these movies because they represented something. It's like
Sounds like Bingham.
Citizen Kane. Yeah, Citizen Kane was, this was an innovative movie.
Yeah,
Angles, camera angles, and stuff like that. Breathless was a representation of what French filmmakers were going through that would eventually
French
come
New
over
Wave.
here as part of the 70s, focusing on character more than
Rumblefish would have been your new Hollywood.
Yep. And The Graduate was timelessness, really, and understanding how performance tells more of a story than the lines itself. So, and when I was watching this movie, I was picking up all those old lessons that I had learned, right? And it's like, yes, am I the guy who, can't wait for the next Marvel movie? Yes. Am I the guy who thinks The Graduate's one of the greatest movies ever made? Absolutely. You were there in the movie theater when we watched Endgame, and my fucking brain exploded and oozed out of my ears. But, you don't often see me sitting there deep in rapt attention and thought over a movie. And this movie was reminding me of stuff like that. And in fact, I'm going to say something that you and I have kind of already sort of talked about. I hope this is the future of movies. Where the cineplexes are only there for the big spectacle movie. Yes, I can't wait until I can go back to a movie theater and go to an IMAX screen and see Godzilla on there, right? But at the same time, in the in-between time, I want to see more of these types of movies that are a little bit more mid-budget, a little bit smaller, a little bit more personal. And I want to not have to worry about going to a movie theater and seeing. I want to be able to sit at home, watch some scenes, pause it, think about it for a bit, and then prepare myself for the next.
I think that if both of those types of movies are going to coexist or exist at all, that's the model that it's going to have to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I want Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. I want them all to become powerful studios, and be able to produce stuff like this that makes people really kind of sit there and think about stuff. And I would love for budgets to kind of dial back a little bit too. Because just 20 years ago, a movie did not have to make $1 billion freaking dollars to be successful.
Yeah.
I want, and I want Disney and Paramount, because Paramount's soon going to be taking over the CBS app. So I'm going to assume that Paramount will release mid-level movies through that as well. But I would like to see all of the studios really want to try to do something other than the spectacle. Because sometimes you can make a really good movie like Mank, and it is a spectacle in and of itself, because either it makes you think about other great movies you've seen, or it makes you think about like being in a movie theater, even though you're just sitting at home.
Well, I think you're dead on about, even this year, when you think about the movies that came out on Netflix alone, you had a Spike Lee movie, you had an Aaron Sorkin movie, you had a Ron Howard movie, right? There's already talk now that Netflix is working on something with David Lynch. So it's like, yeah, Netflix is absolutely going after sort of the prestige auteur directors and allowing them to present a movie with a reasonable budget, not a crazy budget, on their streaming platform service. And that's, I think, a great thing. I mean, you've got the Christopher Nolans of the world out there who are railing against the decision now for Warner Brothers to put all their stuff on HBO Max. But it's like, what reality are you living in?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Nolan, but you're never going to get money again to make a movie if you can't make it work.
Right.
And guess what? Also, I have a 50-inch TV that sits pretty close to my face, because of the way that my living room is set up. Some people have 70-inch TVs. You can still get the grandeur, if you will.
And in many ways, the theater experience has become more and more diminished. It hasn't kept up with technology. It is, and honestly, the general public is not the greatest audience to see a movie with anymore. It's just not. There's not that respect for cinema that there used to be. Even if I go to the little arts theater I got to contend with some 80-year-old couple who are just talking through the whole thing because they can't
I've
hear
done
it.
that.
They can't
Yep.
hear it, or they're questioning, asking each other what the hell's going on. And just like, shut the fuck up. If
Right.
you can't handle this experience, then watch it at home.
Right. Right. Well, and that's the other thing. It's like, well, people say, well, what about the cost of it or whatever? It's like, well, I mean, I could pay $30 to rent a movie, have dinner at home. Maybe even after the pandemic or something, have a friend over or have a group of people over. And now I've spent less than I would have if I'd have gone to the movie theater and saw it.
Yeah.
And if it's something like a Bond movie or the next Marvel movie or something, maybe I would pay $60 just to keep it and watch it
Yeah.
as many times as I want forever from day one that it's released. Maybe I would do that, because in the long run, if I'm revisiting movie theaters, I'm going back to that, I'm spending the money anyway, whether it's all at the movie theater or I'm stopping off at the Qdoba or I'm, or whatever, or I'm buying drinks and popcorn. We both come from the movie theater industry, and it would be a shame for those things to go away.
Yep.
But things go away. We both came from video stores, and I don't think we shed too many tears.
No.
Over those, not like some people do.
There's a tangible thing that I miss, and there's a communal aspect that I'll miss. And I want to see small independent theaters thrive. I want to see projects like the Can and Downtown Indy actually be able to do what they want to do and bring a lot of interesting films to the city and expose the city to films that they wouldn't normally get exposed to. There's an artistic growth and a cultural growth that communities need, and that cinema can provide. But yes, it's not a one-size-fits-all model. It just isn't, and there has to be an adaptation, and there has to be a pushing of some technical boundaries as well to really justify the existence of the blockbuster theater moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it no longer can you just go to a movie theater. Like, when we were kids, everything played at the movie theater. Stuff that in the 90s would have been direct to video, like the Cannon movies or something. It's like, yeah, you want to go see the new Chuck Norris movie? You could, in the 80s. It didn't have to be relegated to streaming or to a video store, because it just couldn't make the money to justify the cost of distribution and justify the theaters giving it space. So yeah, times change, and I still want those big grand movies. And yes, I do to a certain extent miss the idea of seeing something on the big screen. I wouldn't have seen this on the big screen. I wouldn't have seen Mank on the big screen. But I'm more than happy to watch it, on Netflix. And, and yes, you're right. There are always going to be those people who are going to be upset over the shift towards home. But I'm sorry, it's the future. And future doesn't slow down for anybody. And that's, that's the way it goes. But do you want to at all mention anything about like some of the controversy around this?
I think it's an interesting thing to mention, and I think probably the right way to go into this movie is to not allow yourself an opinion on who wrote what in Citizen Kane, right?
Yeah.
Because there is a controversy perpetuated by a few different sides of the argument. In the 70s, Pauline Kael wrote kind of an infamous hit piece on Orson Welles that detailed, in her opinion, that he wasn't as responsible for the script as Mankiewicz was. That was almost immediately debunked in a lot of ways. And that piece is seen as sort of a bit of a stain on Kael's career. There are there are researchers who have done a lot of looking into the final scripts and compared those to the final product, and it's pretty apparent that Wells did what he was going to do and did what he did a lot on the fly. And the movie that he made is the masterpiece that it is because of his genius. But that being said, there are broad strokes, and there is credit to be given to Mankiewicz for his screenplay. But what Fincher said is he doesn't care. He doesn't care who wrote what. He doesn't care whose genius is which, right? He was more interested in telling the story of a man who initially said he didn't want credit, but then said he did when he realized that maybe what he wrote was the best thing he had ever written, right? And he was much more interested in telling that story, and I think that is what really comes through.
Yeah. And, and this is also, this is also a dramatization, like
Yes.
any movie like this, obviously things are going to be trumped up in some ways, played down in other ways, and that you got to take some of that with a grain of salt, and almost have to look at things like saying, hey, I can only judge upon what I see happening in the movie. And if you like Gary Oldman, if you like, Amanda Seyfried, if you like Charles Dance, speaking of Godzilla, he was in the last Godzilla movie.
The performances in this movie are great. And
yes,
it should be mentioned that I believe that if there's any filmmaker working today that is most akin to the process as someone like Stanley Kubrick, it's probably David Fincher.
Yeah,
he's very meticulous on how everything looks. He's very meticulous about the nuances of the performance. He is someone who will ask for 100, 200 takes until he gets what he wants, and then he will put it together in editing, right? So he works very closely with his editor to get a composite performance based on all the takes that he got. He wants coverage of everything. That's what he did in the two of the best scenes in the movie, I feel, are both at Hearst Castle. The first big party scene that Mankiewicz is at, where everyone is, it's almost like you have these the most important people in the room and then everybody out on the edge of the room who are listening to the conversation of the people in the middle room. It's almost like performance. Yeah. Right. And the
political
way that
performance.
And the way it's cut, and everybody on the edge of the room, they're the people who want to be in the conversation, but they're taking their cues from everyone who is important. Right. So
because when somebody steps outside of that, she has to excuse herself.
Yep. She Marianne goes, she oversteps. Right. And then she is now relegated to the periphery, and
to the outside.
To the outside, right?
Not even in the same room.
And you can see where Mankiewicz has his role to play. He's the devil's advocate, right? Yeah. And they appreciate him because it keeps the conversation from becoming stagnant.
Right. And he's the court jester.
He's court jester. Yeah. So then there's another scene later where it's the famous, now it will be famous, it's probably already famous from a lot of what people talk about in this movie, the scene where Oldman is drunk and he shows up at the costume party and he takes the whole room to task, especially Hearst, and describes, like you said, his movie that he's going to write. That was something like over 100 takes. I can't imagine. I mean, consider, even imagine.
Because there's a lot of long shots too. Oh my God, no. But
But then what he did is he got into the room with his editor and he's like, okay, well, I like this portion of this take and this portion of this take, and they put the whole scene together, and it's beautiful. It works amazing. Yeah. Yeah. He's David Fincher. I read somewhere that Brad Pitt once said that watching a movie with David Fincher is like watching a football game with Bill Belichick. He said it's maddening. He's just constantly questioning the choices of the director.
Well, remind me to never make a movie and show it to David Fincher. Then.
Right, don't do it.
But anyway, yes. So Yeah, I mean, here we are, and it's also mentioned in this that Wells was working on an adaptation of Hearts of Darkness. I think that plays a lot into this. At one point, they talk about like a Moby Dick reference in which Mankiewicz becomes Ahab. So it's all there. It's just is your attention there. And
Right.
This is certainly probably I think Oldman is probably certainly favored for a second Oscar.
Yes. Oldman's very good. Seyfried is very good.
Yeah.
Charles Dance is very good. I mean, everyone's really good in this. You've got like a weird little, the weirdest probably cameo, but it's kind of a perfect casting, is Bill Nye of Upton Sinclair.
Is Upton Sinclair, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Lily Collins, she's great in this.
Yeah, and she's got her own thing that she's got her own little arc as well. So these are a lot of circles that end up intertwining into this kind of Venn diagram of a movie. That when you look back on it, you realize, yeah, it is a very good movie. Again, I do wonder if I just like the experience of watching a movie like this for the first time in a long time a little bit more than the movie itself, but it's still a very good movie.
Yeah, it's very heavy on aesthetic, and I think that when I'm kind of feeling like an old Hollywood type movie, like a Sunset Boulevard, like a an LA Confidential, even, this is going to be one of those movies that I think of that perfectly realizes that time and place. It's a time capsule almost, but it's constructed as one, right?
Yep, exactly. So any final words on Mank?
Nope. I really, really, really liked it. And I expect in what we get as some sort of Academy Awards, Golden Globes situation, I expect this movie will do quite well.
I would have to think so. I mean, again, the year that it is, we're going to see some odd nominations maybe. But certainly a movie like this is probably not going to get snubbed in any way. I mean, absolutely, this is probably going to get double-digit Oscar nominations if I had to.
I would expect so.
Yeah. Hey, we got a regular show every Wednesday. It's called Film Seizure. This upcoming Wednesday is our 150th episode.
That's wild.
Isn't it?
Yep.
We are watching Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, that's pretty worthy.
It's pretty worthy for Big 150.
Heck yeah.
So every Monday also you can listen to me talk about a monster movie because, obviously I took film class, so I know stuff about monster movies. And let me see if this week's movie, Giant Gila Monster. That's not going to prove that I took a film class. Anyway, so you can listen to that on Mondays. Both of those things happen at filmseizure.com. All of our stuff can be found where the usual podcasts can be found, like Apple, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, SoundCloud. You name it, we're probably there someplace. And as far as we've got a couple of more of these Film Seizure streams the movies coming up in December. Sometime shortly after Christmas, there's Wonder Woman that at least myself and Chuck will be talking about. Maybe Jason, depends if he's game. If he's game. And then towards the end of the year, right at the end of the year, or maybe right there, maybe it's a great way to ring in the new year. I'll be talking about the second chapter of the Transformers Netflix trilogy.
Oh yeah,
Earthrise.
I still need to get into that.
I like it. It's good. I know some people had some issues, but nothing's ever going to be 1984 again. I think people just need to remember that sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's clearly made for an older audience too. I mean, Yeah, so that'll be coming before the like right around New Year's. So I'll be talking about that, and whenever more opportunities to do these types of Film Seizure reviews of newer movies, we'll do them where we can. But thanks for listening. I hope our deep dive into a very old Hollywood type of movie was of interest. It's one of those things, it's like maybe this isn't going to reach a lot of people as far as the movie, as far as Mank itself, but I think those people who are going to be interested and miss these types of movies are going to get a real kick out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I bet you Bingham liked it.
Probably. I bet our friend Dave probably liked it too.
Yep, I bet he did.
So until you hear from us again, Jason, thank you for joining us, joining me. Thank you for being part of us in this sense of us. I'm Jeff Arbuckle. Don't forget to leave me a spot at the end of the couch.
This is a business where the buyer gets nothing for his money but a memory. What he bought still belongs to the man who sold it. That's the real magic of the movies.